if you asked me like 10 years ago, would people come into a bar and ask for a non-alcoholic spirit? I'd be like, well, why would you do this?
Welcome to Tampa's Table, a culinary journey. I'm Jeff Houck. I'm Vice President of Marketing for the 1905 family of restaurants, and today we're going to be talking mixology, all the magic that happens behind the bar. And with me today is guest Ro Patel. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Ro is, for me, the Obi-Wan of cocktails when it comes to Tampa. Consultant, expert, just anything that I've learned about cocktails in the past 15 years, I've learned pretty much from you. So I'm thrilled that you're here. Thanks for joining us.
I'm thrilled I'm here too.
So what are the basics of a great cocktail?
I think basics are the ingredients. You know, I'm a huge fan of classic cocktails. Most of those consist of 3 ingredients. And we talked about this a long time ago about ice being a major component of a cocktail.
And we'll come back to that. So the 3 ingredients that you see, what do you have to have?
I'd like to say premium ingredients, ingredients in terms of spirits, I guess, or liqueurs. They have to marry really well. They have to. There's all. I mean, today we have so many brands, so many wonderful spirits choices. Once upon a time, you didn't have as many. So, I guess alchemists, mixologists back in the time, like 1880s, they would have created their own tinctures, bitters, syrups, sometimes even their own liqueurs. And so I think going back to that time and keeping things like high quality, I think that really helps.
So in other words, better ingredients, better cocktails.
Yeah, it's pretty much. And yeah.
So there, you talked a little bit about the chemistry. Tell me a little bit about the shape of the glass, the type of glass, and how that delivers a different experience. Because I think it's an unknown thing for a lot of people. The difference between a highball glass and a Collins glass and things like that can get a little mysterious.
Sure. Obviously, like you say, picking the right glassware is important. I find it interesting. Like if you look at old cocktail books, a martini glass was like 2 ounces, and now then 13. So I think we indulge a little bit more. I think in our choices of glasses, but just like wine, the glass allows you aeration. It also allows you a chance to get your nose closer to the juice, if you like. So, like if you're using something like effervescence and fizz, I would recommend, like you say, a Collins glass. It allows the bubbles to rise much higher, and it's more enjoyable than just say using a rocks glass.
Now, you came to Tampa in the mid 2000s. We're in 2023 as we tape this.
Yeah.
Tell me about the change in Tampa from a cocktail perspective.
It's massively changed, and when I first came to Tampa, coming from London, 2007, a cocktail back then would have consisted of Red Bull and a French vodka, and people were happy to pay.
Was that called a punch in the mouth, or what was that?
No, and so when I came, I didn't know how to make the drinks of that time, I guess, because restaurants in Tampa were using like sour mix, and the cocktails were maybe 4 or 5 drink ingredients in a martini glass, and that was considered a cocktail. Things fast forward today now, and you've got pretty much, it's wonderful to go to any bar and restaurant in Tampa, and you can get a great old fashioned. You can get great classics or riffs on classics, and I think that's changed within 10 years. That major change. I thought about it last night actually about what was the change in the function, and Cameron Mitchell opened a restaurant called Ocean Prime, and I was trying to open a bar here, and no one really wanted to talk to me and give me a chance to look at space. And the business plan was about making cocktails, and it was the restaurant. It was an 80-20 rule, like more cocktails and then 20% food. And I was like, I don't understand that concept. And then Ocean Prime opened, and he made these drinks with gin called gimlets and cucumber in them. And all of a sudden, everyone wanted a cocktail. And then my phone rang. It's like, hey, I get it. Like, I went to this restaurant and there's something called a gimlet, and I'm sold. And I think that was a segue for a lot of people to enjoy a cocktail that consisted of something that wasn't like a neutral flavor.
Right. So what I recall from that time period when I was a food writer for the Tampa Tribune was that really at the genesis of this new renaissance that we've been experiencing for, say, it's hard to believe, but it's been more than 15 years, is that there was sort of a formation of a U.S. Bartenders Guild chapter here, and then people from local bars would get together and have cocktail competitions. Sometimes they were sponsored by specific spirits or brands, but you saw everybody getting better because they were feeding off each other's vibe.
Yep. Absolutely.
And that, it was like cocktails were first, and then you started to see food trucks, and then restaurants, and then, everything was rising at the same time, then coffee and everything. But the cocktails were important as sort of a benchmark for what expectations were. And specifically, if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was Prohibition era cocktails, classic, old school Prohibition cocktails, and well-made, almost Prohibition style spirits.
Yep, I agree. I think the USBG had a huge part to play. Tampa's just an amazing place. If you build it, they come, and they I think the first party they threw was a repeal party, and it made like national waves, and it was like, holy crap, like people are noticing Tampa in like 2011. And the bartenders, like you said, I think they're a huge catalyst for owners to go, we got some really clever staff here, we need to like get them to create some of these drinks in our own restaurants. And I think that changed a lot of things.
I remember specifically before they held their first repeal party, which at one point occupied a whole hotel. Each room was themed to a different drink. But before that, on repeal day, or on the day that Prohibition was passed, they carried a casket down 7th Avenue. I think it was from the Bricks all the way down to like almost like the Dirty Shame. And they were carrying a casket, and it was a joyful celebration, but it was such a galvanizing moment. It was like, oh, there are people who actually care about this. And then when repeal day happened, it was like, it started small in the basement, I believe it was, of the Ybor Hotel. Before the Vicente Ybor Hotel, when before they changed it. And I remember Hudson Valley rye whiskey came, and there were all these little rooms where they were doing different things. And it was the ceilings were low, and it was like, oh man, we can have cool stuff,
Yeah.
But a lot of those bartenders are now driving programs at a lot of the bigger restaurants. What I'm wondering is, why was the bar program the thing that kind of moved the needle? Was it the professionalism? Was it the dedication to craft?
It sounds silly, but like there was that probably know PBS better than I do, but there was a documentary on Prohibition that came around the same time. You had Boardwalk Empire that was very popular, and people just, I guess you get to that point, like the 20s were cool, and it was a fun time to celebrate, I guess. And I think that had a lot to do with like going back to that time period of just having fun with enjoying booze.
Well, there's an authentic history here because, during Prohibition, one of the wettest places in America was Florida, and specifically Tampa, because you had all of these shipping routes that went north-south from Havana to Tampa, and Tampa was the deep water port. I mean, I've heard stories that there was a hurricane that washed ashore a bunch of cedar logs, and they went out to rescue the people who were on the boat. The people on the boat were gone, and the logs were empty and hollow because there had been contraband in them, and somebody during the storm went out and got them. So, I mean, there's all kinds of raids in Ybor City. At the Columbia where I work, there's a search warrant on the wall from 1929. There is a history here of cocktails. It just kind of went to sleep for a little while, and now it's back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
And you can play with that when you're creating drinks.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what I've noticed about the Tampa bartending community here. Rather than focus on what everyone else is doing in different cities, they've looked at their ingredients here. They've there's a lot of fun to be had with Florida lifestyle and stuff, and using the ingredients that are local to us. I think that's been a big part of the success for the cocktail scene here.
Well, I remember you were one of the founders of Ciro's Speakeasy, and it was sort of playing with that history. And I remember going into Ciro's Speakeasy, down in South Tampa, and it's like embedded in the side of like a residential building. And you walk in, and it is this ode to velvet and alcohol, and then the first time I met you, we were discussing the importance of the shape and the clarity and the quality of ice. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the importance of ice, and then how ice has become to be important in Tampa now.
Yeah. So, we talked like ice is an important ingredient. Just treat it like an ingredient.
There's some drinks that have crush, some have cubes, some are spheres.
Yep.
I mean, I went out and bought molds. That's how deep I went into it after talking to you. I was like, I got to have this ice at my house.
Yeah. So back then, we sought out a particular ice machine that wasn't really available here. And I think, people were like, why do you want that ice machine? Like, no one has that for like 60 years. That's like no one, but we got the ice machine. And then, we actually made our own molds and made our own ice, and we had blocks, and the bartenders would chisel it and make
like chisel
spears
it in front of customers.
Clarity, like you say, Christmas, super cold, keep the drink consistent from the first sip to the last, it was paramount. Crushed ice is always a fun ingredient. Now moving forward, there's the Tampa ice plant that provides really amazing ice on a daily basis to restaurants in Tampa and Tampa Bay. And yeah, you can get great ice now. You don't have to like chisel it anymore. You can actually just get it from a really good ice source here in Tampa.
And then, the way I've been to some of these places that craft the ice, they have literally CNC machines that are laser cutting the ice and putting designs in it.
Yep.
They've got these massive tanks that make clear, huge blocks that then they cut out of. It's an incredible investment.
Yep.
And I remember talking to the folks that started Doggery Craft Ice, and they were like, do you think there's a market for this? Do you think there's a market for this? And I go, I want to think yes, but I don't know. And then when I saw how many great restaurants were pinning the bar program as the sort of tent pole for their success, let's not beat around the bush about it. The bar is the biggest profit margin in a restaurant. Investing in great ice is an investment in the customer as well as the whole experience. And you taught me that, there are drinks I hadn't even thought about. There are drinks that are better with crushed ice, some better with cubes, some better with other, just regular. I think it was a Hoshizaki ice machine. Was that right? Or
it was a cold draft.
Cold draft.
Cold draft.
I'm sorry.
But to go to any restaurant now, it's a default or a bar, even, some of the bars on 7th Avenue, and you ask for a whiskey on the rocks, and it's a default. They'll put it on a big cube, which, that's something that maybe would have happened in Japan, and now it's, we do that as a default here.
Yeah, once it got easier to get them, that made a difference.
Yeah, and
it does take labor.
Yeah, and like you said, Doggery does a great job, and that someone is still physically cutting that ice, at 4 a.m,
right?
Just so you can get great ice the next evening.
Yeah, and they're standing in a cooler with a jacket, and they're monitoring all the cutting and things like that, and they can customize any design on a piece of ice that they want. I remember him when I was at Doggery Ice one day doing a story that they were doing something for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And so they were putting the Alabama logo on it. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was possible. It was like the world went from black and white to color on that, So what are some of the things that are exciting you about Tampa's cocktail scene right now?
I'm always fascinated about how the guest will experience everything. And also I feel like sometimes the guests inform us of what they want. And I'm seeing... maybe not a shift, but we talked about premium cocktails, premium ingredients. People are curious about, what is that? I want to try that. What's up on the top shelf? Bartenders are like, hey, you need to try this. Right. It's very common, I guess, now, is for people's curiosity to like try 16 different bourbons or actually tequila or mezcal. I mean, a smoky, spirit from Mexico is quite popular these days. And the other side of that is that coin, I guess, is people certain age group, I guess, are not maybe drinking as much.
Right.
And so they're curious about low ABV cocktails or even non-alcoholic spirits. And if you asked me like 10 years ago, would people come into a bar and ask for a non-alcoholic spirit? I'd be like, well, why would you do this? But I've tasted some of these amazing low ABV or no alcohol spirits, and they've got great viscosity. They've got the flavor profiles of if you wanted a gin or a bourbon or a tequila. And I think the audience or the guests are trying different things that don't necessarily have to have alcohol in me either.
You know, I was a Shirley Temple and a Boy Scout drinker from way back. And when you think about it, it plants something in your head that, oh, okay, well, it can be sweet and it can be enjoyable. And I'm using the same glass that my grandmother would drink out of or something like that. It just it plants the seed a little bit. The other thing I think that's happening that you and I have discussed is the making of spirits locally and how that has improved. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some great distilleries. Cane, Florida Cane, that's based in Tampa, in Ybor. There's a couple of other great distillers. We talked about it, about how some people that aren't born into distilling families are just curious. There's a gentleman I met a few months ago that really loved bourbon and rum, and he went around the Caribbean islands to learn more about it. He comes back to Tampa, and all of a sudden he goes, "I want to buy a distillery. I want to start being an alchemist and kind of creating my own rum and laying down barrels of bourbon in Florida." And it's brilliant because, like, you know, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time or even 15 or 20, that's his goal, is to rest or create bourbon and let it rest for 20 years. And, we have a different climate here, so it's going to be exciting to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, people don't necessarily understand how long of a process making, say, a barrel-aged spirit is. And that is literally what the phrase implies. It is sitting in a barrel, collecting flavors of a certain type. There's even in Ybor City, you mentioned Florida Cane, the Gasparilla rum that comes out of the Tampa Bay Rum Company. They do a great banana bread rum that opens up all kinds of possibilities. So people aren't just making the product, they're making unique flavors to stand out, just like a chef would make a dish.
Yeah.
But then those flavors are then used at the bar in a unique way. So when you're coming up with a cocktail, where do you go for inspiration?
When I come up with I'm actually, I kind of somewhat of a purist. I like to look at classic cocktails. I always, like I say, like going back to the bartenders in Tampa, I always look to them. If they're in our bar, they come up with some amazing stuff. And as you know, playing off riffs of classics. I think going back to that 3-ingredient rule kind of thing. So my inspiration comes from, like, I guess, riffs on classics, really.
People don't understand that every cocktail that you make is a segment of time. And the more ingredients you have, the longer it takes to make, the less cocktails you can make, the less money you make. And so it has to be efficient, it has to be flavorful, it has to be cost effective, but it also has to stimulate the mind. That's why I think so many cocktails have great names. You mentioned the old fashioned before. The old fashioned is what I use, the way I use brisket at barbecue. Like, if you can't make good brisket, you can't make good barbecue. It's the hardest thing to make. Old fashioned to me is sort of it's the standard that everybody does. If you can't make a good old fashioned, I'm probably not going to try anything else.
There's a couple of standards, like I guess the pillars of cocktails. Old fashioned's one. Mai Tai for me is
Manhattan.
One. Manhattan, a gimlet,
right.
A daiquiri, a simple like daiquiri natural, 3 ingredients. If you can make that well, then you can probably make a lot of other drinks really well at that bar.
Sure. Yeah, there was a great drink we had at Eulalie called the Dirty Richard, named for my boss, Richard Gosmart. And it was a brine cube with an olive in it.
Wow.
That charged the drink as you drank it. But it was labor intensive. And so it became a problem in terms of selling it in a matter of time. But we had another cocktail where we used the Florida cane fire ant vodka, and it had just a little bit of spice to it. And we named it after the Princess Eulalie statue that has the flames around it. And it's people expect cocktails to be playful. You know, it's old fashions and Manhattans are great, but they want you to play a little bit. Is that liberating for you?
Yeah, the playfulness of it, like you said, you know, it is a bar. You know, you're supposed to have fun while you're there. I don't take cocktails that serious. I mean, we work seriously and we make great drinks. You'd like to, you know, you hope, but it's a fun place and you're supposed to have fun. And you mentioned glassware as a vehicle, and you can really, you know, that's a vehicle to enjoy and celebrate a drink that's fun, and you know, the presentation is important. I think we were in a cocktail competition. We judged, I think, once, and people were doing amazing things like bringing out a chest.
Yeah.
And opening the chest,
there was a presentation to it.
Yeah, and I mean, who would not want that as to drink? I mean, here in Tampa, we've got the relationship with cigars, and you know, people enjoy smoked old fashions, and you know, you go to Hotel Haya, and you know, you order an old fashioned there, and they'll give you your drink in a cigar box, and then you open it, and it's smoking, and you know,
it's a beautiful presentation. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I noticed the evolution of bar talent in the use of cigars as a motivator. When there was one competition, I'm not going to name the bartender, where he puffed on a cigar and blew into the drink and then handed the drink. This is pre-COVID. And I was just like, what? No, I don't want that. I had to taste it because I was judging it. And then the next time I noticed somebody had tried to smoke the ice ball that they were using. Not a bad idea, but it doesn't always translate aromatically if it's covered up in liquid. Great idea. They were all going for a smokiness, like you would get from a peaty whiskey or something like that. And then the third one I judged, it was a Four Roses contest, and it was in St. Pete. And a bartender from Miami came up, took a cedar plank, bruleed the plank, put the glass over the plank, and now it's standard. I see it everywhere, but everybody was trying to get to that point. And I saw this maturation in the span of maybe about a year.
Yeah.
And I went from, you know, basically drinking backwash to get into this really nuanced, beautiful, smoky, multi-dimensional cocktail.
Yep.
And it's amazing to me how fast bartenders learn from each other. And it's something that I think, I know chefs do that, but there's something about bartending that I think really, it encourages them to play.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like any industry, you hope to have best practices. And when you're, I guess, finishing work or you're at someone else's bar and you're looking at like how they do things, and the USBG, you know, and I'm sure when they get together, they collaborate, they talk about those things, you know. But yeah, it's so funny, like from blowing a cigar to, you know, to actually a cedar plank.
Yeah, that was nasty. But I took a bullet for the team. You know, I'm always willing to drink anything, at least once. You know, the other thing that I've noticed is restaurant design has changed to make the bar essentially a center point and a stage for the rest of the restaurant. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in Tampa.
Yeah, I think not that bars were ever an afterthought, but it's funny, like you mentioned, the relationship with the financial reward for having a solid bar program is it insulates you from, or it protects you maybe the food can be a little bit more higher quality with less percentage points and all that good stuff. But the bar actually could be like the workhorse for your restaurant. And if you can see that, then you can put more effort into the presentation of your bar, and it becomes a focal point. And you know, we mentioned Anise a while ago, and it had this wonderful long back bar.
This was Anise Global Gastro Bar. It was right there on Ashley, correct?
Ashley, yeah, Sky Point. And it set the tone. So, you know, that was our marketing there. I guess when you go in, you're like, oh, I've arrived at a cocktail bar.
It looked like you were walking into the Last Supper at the bar. I mean, it just went from wall to wall, and it was beautiful. The backdrop was lovely. And then you had a bartender every so couple of feet.
Yeah.
But it was all really encouraging the bartender as your sort of advocate in hospitality. You know, it wasn't just sort of, here's your drink, there you go.
Right.
There was conversation, and there was an exchange there where other bars had been more or less functional. Yep,
exactly. And then you mentioned a restaurant on Water Street that has the span of their restaurant is a bar.
Yeah. And they really make it. I mean, even as you're driving by on Water Street, you see that's the vision you see, especially at night. So when you're at home and you're done working for the day, what is the thing that you make for yourself at home?
Just bourbon on the rocks or tequila on the rocks, and keep it really simple.
Yeah, that's what your comfort is.
Yeah,
because I think people, especially in the food industry, they look at chefs and bartenders and think, oh, they must have this fantastic, Oz-like experience at home. And if you're anything like me, it's sort of like, okay, that was work. This is home. And I have a little bit of that there, but not as much. But what's the home bar like?
It's funny. I have a lot of spirits and antique booze. I love collecting antique spirits, anything from pre-1950s. So I don't really drink any of that until my friends come around, and then I'll open the cabinet and we'll taste that stuff.
Do you have a favorite antique?
I do. It's a Bacardi, pre-1950s from Cuba.
Before the revolution.
Yeah, and actually we did a dinner tasting for Jameson once, and I pulled out, like, for fun, like, we pulled out a bottle of Jameson for that, and opening that up, the whole thing tastes so different. Back then, the water would have been different, the barrels would have been different. Also, the alcoholic content was 100 proof back then, and now it's 80.
Yeah, that's vastly different.
So that's vastly different.
You didn't have to drink as much to get as far. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, like, in trying to get a gauge of how popular cocktails are and how popular spirits are, for instance, there's a Facebook page called the Tampa Bay Whiskey Society. Very, very active. And it's almost like an intelligence. Everybody's sending out intel about where they're getting the best bottles and everything. And it's like, invariably, it's like, I went to a Costco and they had 10 bottles of this. Hurry and get it now. Or I walked into this neighborhood place that has no reputation. And suddenly it has Pappy Van Winkle for no reason at all.
Yep.
People are really paying attention to not only premium, but value, and then also secondary value in a different way.
Yeah. Surprisingly, it's amazing how that secondary value thing's working, where you can, buy, if you can find a rare gem, and then you can, maybe if you want to make a profit on it, you can send it on secondary market.
Yeah. I have a friend who plays in an online poker league, and they don't bet with money, they bet with whiskey.
Wow.
And I go into his house, and his house is full of Weller and all this stuff, right?
So he's a good poker player.
Yeah. Well, the point is that everybody else in the group is a terrible poker player. That's the poker players you want to be with. And so he has a bar better than some of the bars that I've seen in Tampa. Just by playing poker. But so when you want to go out and look in Tampa to get inspired, where do you go? Because I'm sure you go around to bars and you look like the way chefs go to restaurants.
Yeah. That's a great question. Where would I? You always want to go to the new places, check them out, see what's going on. Who would have thought, like, people investing millions of dollars on restaurant space, which you talked a little bit about the bar design, and they're beautiful. And so, yeah, I'm curious about, like, people are getting architects from all over the world to design their spaces. They're working with amazing branding companies that are award-winning to create a theme and an event, if you like, for people walking in. So I'm always, like, looking at that. I find it fascinating how, we have the Edition Hotel that's absolutely beautiful. And it just makes you happier when you walk in, like those sort of spaces. So I'm curious about that. The drink wise, there's so many great bars out there. There's a place on Swan. I'm a huge fan of the bar scene there. The bartenders are brilliant. There's a little bar in just off 7th Avenue called First Chance, Last Chance. And you can order, like, a random, like, prohibition cocktail there. And I won't say a dive bar. That's, whatever that means to a lot of people.
That's a compliment.
It's a compliment. It's absolutely lovely. And it
means I'm really comfortable here and there isn't anything trying to be too stuffy.
Yeah. But then you can still get a paper plane or an old fashioned, and you're like, I've arrived. Like, I'm in a really good place here. I'm happy, Well, you've talked about going to, like, the Columbia Bar in Ybor, and theater.
Sort of the theater. Well, you said it's almost like ballet.
Oh, mate. brilliant.
And you just sit there and watch. What do you watch when you go there?
I mean, the staff, first of all, you guys probably, how many hundreds of people do you take care of every day? So I sit at the bar, I kind of just, like you say, watching the bartenders work, and they're dancing around, looking after everyone that sits down for dinner as well, or lunch. And then you look at the service bartender that's cranking out amazing, consistently, large format sangria, the sugarcane stick that goes in, just the detail, but it's consistent in the way that they, and then you've got the servers that just seem to just be part of that dance too. And I love seeing the little spirited bottles that go with the mojito. I just think it's just, if you were in the Caribbean, that's how it probably would be done too. The sangria, where they make it
at the table.
Mix at the table.
It's entirely, you see how fresh it is and things like that.
Yep.
Now, you just moved to Ybor recently.
Yep. And
tell me about the future. What are you planning?
I was introduced to this beautiful space on 7th Avenue, and it's basically the former Centre Cubal Espanol social club from the early 1900s, and it's just 5,000 square foot of history. And I got offered a chance to, like, what would I do there? And I've always loved Ybor. The heritage. This, I'm really glad to see that people are investing in it, and it is a jewel in the crown, I think, of Central Florida. And so to be offered this historical space, I was like, I'd like to do something there. And Ybor, there's so many people that come and visit from 8 a.m. all the way through, as you know, till 2 or 3 in the morning. And so the space that we've built is multifunctional, that we hope that would allow people to enjoy the history of the space. But whether it's a coffee experience in the morning, lunch, a lounge area, we have a little dining room. We have some art that will be around the place, like digital art, and we have retail. And so we hope to be kind of an experience that you can come in. 2/3 of it is actually quite, a walking space. So you can just enjoy it as a public space, if you like. And then if you want to have dinner with us or lunch, you can do that too.
And hopefully by the time you see this, it'll be open and you'll be serving.
Yep, and lots of cocktails.
We've
got 2 bars there, which we're excited about. One of them is a 20 tap cocktail program. That should allow the bartenders the freedom to create these wonderful concoctions they have, and knock them out really quickly for the hundreds of people that come through restaurants and bars in Ybor.
Sure.
And then we have a dining room bar for about 18 people for the cocktail experience that's going to be a little unusual. There's the cocktail station there, actually, talking about the investment of bar aesthetics. We've got something called the Teya, which is only 2 in the world. So we're excited for the bartenders to get to play with that, and hopefully the guests will enjoy it too.
So what's the one spirit or one flavor in a glass that you would say, when I want to taste Tampa, this is what I taste?
Oh, wow. God, that's a really good question. I would say, I don't know why, but guava comes to mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's a hard ingredient because it can get too sweet on you. But I know that Tampa International Airport, uses guava as the basis for a sweet cocktail called Spirit of Flight.
Wow.
And it's sort of like it's meant to be sort of a cocktail handshake coming in or leaving and saying goodbye, one last taste of Tampa. But the fact that the airport cared enough to think about cocktails, I think it's huge.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're lucky we have that awesome airport.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you for being a guest. It's been great to talk about it. One thing, though. Do you have anything to drink?
I might have, yeah.
What'd you bring?
So we've got a relationship with a couple of distillers and a couple of places a couple of people that are liquor negotiants, and we asked them, a good friend of mine that's creates spirits, if he could find a rare barrel for us to have our own rare bourbon for 10 rooms. And we've got this wonderful 9-year-old
Oh, wow.
Bourbon.
Leather and lace,
Leather
single
and
barrel
lace.
cask strength bourbon whiskey, 9 years old.
9 years old.
You know it's real when people start writing on the label.
Yeah. I have to say the name Leather and Lace probably conjures up a lot of things for different people.
Well, in my age group, it's Stevie Nicks and Tom Petty singing Leather and Lace.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
that's how old I
yeah.
am. I just dated myself before I even started drinking. But
Well, you want to try some?
absolutely, I'll take a
right.
taste. You don't have to twist my arm for
There you go.
great bourbon.
There we go. Let's see what you
Why
think
is
of this.
bourbon so popular right now?
It's delicious. It's Kentucky champagne.
I love that. Let me see here. So tell me how I should be drinking this.
Quick, no.
Is it because I've used it over a cube? I've used it with a little drop of water.
Yeah, so this has actually got it's nearly 110 proof. So I would sip
So
it.
I'd be calling Uber in about 5 minutes.
Yes, yeah, I would sip it, and of
Okay.
course a nice cube, or like if you have one round. But I'm going to just enjoy this.
Now, do you smell it? What do you do?
Oh yeah, I mean it's gonna, and we've got a high rye content in this.
Oh, you can smell the rye, actually.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
really great.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Well, cheers, man.
Salute. This is officially my favorite podcast. No
That's
offense to anybody else,
delicious.
but my
That
Lord.
is lovely.
It almost evaporates before it gets to your tongue.
Yep, yep.
That's like full of unicorns. And
We only have 180 bottles, and we're the first people
put me
drinking
down for
it.
175, please. I'll save you 5. So you only have 180?
We have only 180 bottles. The next time we go ahead and do this again, we'll have to source another barrel. We're creating our own in partnership with a wonderful distillery in Florida. The gin is going to be called Spiritus Mundi, and it has a lot of those flavor profiles that you would be, I guess, synonymous with Florida and Tampa. We've got citrus in there, a lot of citrus that we actually will, we used all the fruit,
Right.
and not just the peel. And then harking back to my roots being Indian, we've got some ingredients there like cardamom for the gin.
I love how simple the label is too. That's just fun.
Yeah.
Old school.
Old school, yeah.
Well, cheers. And
Cheers,
thank
brother.
you again for being a guest.
I appreciate it.
Keep your eye out for more episodes of Tampa's Table, a culinary journey. Thank you for joining us, and you can find us wherever there's YouTube or podcasts. And keep your eye out for the Tampa's Table cookbook that's coming out in the fall.